After a very long and overwhelming semester, I'm happy to be here today to share the work that I've accumulated during my time here at Guildford. This collection contains pieces that I think express my voice and style as a writer and give insights into the genre that I'm going to continue to explore post-graduation. For my capstone project, I chose 3 of the 6 stories in this collection to revise, with my focus being on different forms of narration. The 2 stories I will be reading from today will be a part of this set of revised pieces. The titles are the Raven Crest Manor and the Curse Call. I will be reading from the beginning of each piece, starting with the Raven Crest Manor. The Raven Crest Manor stood alone, surrounded by iron gates with thick woods forming walls and vineyards that spread like veins. Only one path leads to this home. It was built in the 1900s by the Black family as a fortress to contain their daughter McKenna. A home, that is what we were told it was. A house made of brick and plaster, memories of pain, wood, and paint. It was not a home to us, nor was it a home to the families that came before. They were all birds trapped in a cage that was designed to protect them. It was just a house. But how could a house haunt you from where it stands? No matter where you go, it follows like a shadow covering your skin. What would you do to face it? Carbon. A house is never just a house. It breathes with the lives that lived in it before. My mother's words whisper like an echo in my mind as Jasper and I follow the familiar driveway. As we return to our childhood home, the iron gates getting closer, they were left open for us. The foliage has grown past the gates, wrapping the rusted iron in vines, and the grass is growing between the gravel. The first time we were traveling this path, we were young, bright, and excited. Our family on a new adventure, to fix this house so that we could create our own. That's what our parents did every few months. Father buys a house, he and Mom fix it with the promise that one day we'll have our own house, not to fix, but to live in. This was the house they left unfinished. I hate this house. A loud clap of thunder jolts through us. Jasper jumps a little beside me, sitting up in his seat. Have a nice nap? I ask him. Forgot how far this place was, Jasper says through a yawn. Leaning forward towards the windshield, a storm's coming. Yeah, I figured that, I said, the old fountain with the large stone raven that perches on top, looking out towards us. I remember that, Jasper says, opening the car door and letting in the cold, wet air, making me shiver. Jasper stands in front of the raven. It was the namesake of the manor. Ravens were hidden across the property, a symbol of the original family that had lived here, the first of many. The Blacks built the house, then came the Irvines, and then the Sterlings, who only lasted a few months. And then it was a mix of ghost stories and thrill seekers until we had arrived. The first thing our mother had us do was go around and find them all, a sort of scavenger hunt for us as they worked on the house. It took us 3 weeks to find all the hidden ravens. Another boom of thunder, this one louder and closer, makes Jasper look at me. I never asked how much he remembered. He was 4 when it happened. Don't worry, Jas. I know what I'm doing. Has your big sister ever led you wrong? I said, placing my hand on his shoulder with a soft smile. Well, there's a first time for everything, he says, looking up at the towering house before us. We're just going to look around and see how the damage is, I say. The stone stairs are cracked as if they would crumble with a single step. The red brick is now covered in a charcoal-like black dust. The vines have twisted like snakes up the stairs and around the handrails. And your plan for Miles finding out you're flipping it is, Jasper asks, standing at the bottom of the stairs. Miles is probably halfway around the world right now on one of his book tours. We're probably the last thing on his mind, Jas. The oak door still towers over me. The images of my mother fills me as my hand hovers over the brass knob. Brass and oak are a warm combination, Carmen. A perfect finish for a forever home. My mother's voice enters my mind suddenly, a memory of holding the door handle as she screwed it into the door. My father used to say I was her little shadow, never straying too far from her. We'll be quick, I say to myself, pushing the door, which opens with a loud screech. Note to self, put new hinges on the door. The inside is covered with dust, making the air thick. The large stairwell in the center, with the maroon rug I remember, has now turned a dull gray. Vines flow through the skylight, and old sticks and leaves decorate the floor. Okay, so we'll have to replace the skylight, but the wood doesn't look too bad. One of the positives of oak, I say, running my fingers across it. Can you give me the flashlight? I ask, turning back to Jasper. He's still at the bottom of the stairs, looking through the open door. Jas? I ask. You good? Jasper gives me a slow nod, holding my backpack to his chest as if it was a shield. It's just a house, he says. It's just a house. I nod back at him, holding my hand out to him slowly. He comes up the steps, placing his hand in mine. He stops suddenly just before the doorway, looking down at the wooden flooring that's covered in leaves and dirt. It's just a stupid house, he says again, squeezing my hand tightly, finally stepping through the threshold. Are you okay now? I ask him. He shrugs, pushing my backpack into my hands. It's somehow bigger and smaller than I remember it being, he says, stepping towards the staircase and looking up at the skylight. The clouds overhead are shifting as the storm gets closer. Guess we'll get to see if there are any leaks, I say, offering him a flashlight before clicking mine on. Scanning the walls, I find an old light switch, flipping it and causing the lamps on the walls to flicker. Well, I had expected that. So this was the foyer, right? Jasper says, glancing at the wooden dresser against the wall that holds a vase of dead flowers. A framed photo of the Black family by the door. It was screwed in just above it. A house's history is like a story yet to be written, my mother would say. The photo is of elegant black and white, a man and woman standing side by side, dressed in a suit and a dress. In the center is McKenna Black, with short midnight hair, blue eyes, and a smirk that screamed mischievous troublemaker. Miles used to say that we looked like we could be related, especially after my mom cut my hair that summer, when it got so hot that Jasper nearly passed out while searching for the ravens. A shiver runs down my spine that I shake off, turning back to Jasper. Yeah, which means the family room should be here, I say, opening the door to a room with a couch and chairs with a circular table in the center. A deck of cards was still spread across the table from our family game nights. The dining room, then the kitchen, and the wine cellar are all on this side of the house. I'm not going to the cellar, Carmen. He glares at me. I can't help but remember Miles and me scaring him down there during a game of hide and seek. He swore off the room after that. All right. You check out the sitting room and the library for damage. Just don't go upstairs without me. Don't have to tell me twice, he says, wandering away as the flashlight lights up the room, casting shadows of antiques that decorate the space. A grandfather clock sits in the corner, still ticking away, still ticking through the times, though the time's off. Dad loved that clock. Making my way through the dining room, a long table and chairs sit frozen in time. The table placements are still in their proper spaces. The windows are covered in ivy-like vines. The dining room is the heart of the home, Carmen. That is where we will spend most of the time, eating dinner and telling stories. The kitchen has shelves of delicate china with blue floral patterns covered in a layer of dust. The wood oven still had a cast iron pan on the burner, with utensils sitting on the counter next to it as breakfast were about to be prepared. The wine cellar is in the corner, a large wooden door carved into the ground with wooden steps that screech with my every move. The walls are cobblestone with wood shelves of green bottles filed away. Cobwebs stick to my skin as I search the walls for the dark hints of mold or rot. I pull out the torch my father gave me for my 18th birthday. The additional burst of light catches the cobwebs, turning them to light embers. A house is like a body. It breathes, it lives. It has bones, eyes, skin, and a heart. Like a body, it can grow ill. If we are to help this house, we need to know what ails it. A loud crash from upstairs makes me jump. Jas! I shout, racing back up the stairs to the foyer. Jasper. "We'll be quick," she says. "Just check for damages," she says. I grumble to myself as I make my way across the foyer. "Okay, Jasper, there was a library. Where was the library?" I ask myself. Across the foyer lies another door, another sitting room, probably the first of like 6, if I remember right. I never understood why people needed so many rooms. Then again, I live in a 200 square foot dorm room. So it's all about perspective, I guess. God, this place is so loud. The air is thick with dust, making me sniffle. My ears are stuffed like they're adjusting. It feels like static. I remember when I was a kid, I used to sleep with a pillow curled around my ears. My mother hated it. She would always say that it wasn't safe, that I could cover my face by accident. Every night she'd come, check in on me, and settle my pillows down, pulling the cotton sheet from my face. "Honey, the house is trying to tell you something. A brush of the branch on a roof, a creak in the wood floors, a breeze that shifts the curtains. It's all a story it wants to share with you," she said. I never understood what she meant. I could never feel the houses the way she and Carmen can. It's like they speak a language I don't, like I'm reading a code with no cipher. The library is wall to ceiling with leather-bound pages, each novel the size of my chemistry textbook and covered in a thick layer of dust. There are a couple of leather couches and small tables with more book stacks. The mantel with a brick fireplace and a line of antiques, a clock of tin that is painted gold, a black typewriter with an oak finish radio. A flash of lightning strikes outside, causing the library to light up with shadows. Without thinking, I step backwards. A light squeeze under my foot causes me to look down. A light brown teddy bear with button eyes and a red ribbon stares back at me. "I don't remember you, little guy." I kneel to pick it up. All of a sudden, the static feels louder. I hear footsteps and a door closes somewhere. I feel something cold. I close my eyes. "It's just a house, it's just a house, it's just a house," I whisper as the panic begins to rise. A hand comes to rest on my shoulder, and I let out a shout. That was that part. Reading's a lot. Okay. The Raven Crest Manor is a multi-perspective short story that explores the dynamics of 3 siblings as they struggle to come to terms, I can read, with the truth of their mother's death. The narration is a close first person for each of the siblings, allowing the reader to see how each sibling is reacting to the events of the story in real time. Now, after I catch my breath, I will be reading from the beginning of The Crow's Call. You didn't tell me it required so much air. Okay. To be a witch meant to be burned by fire, hanged by the neck, or drowned. It had begun far in the east, with rumors of women who could bring plague and fire, women who control shadows and summon the devil with carvings of wood. Camilla Proctor was a witch. However, in the town she lived in, she spread no illness, caused no fire, nor summoned the devil with blood or symbols. No, she was simply a mother of 2 beautiful little girls. Willow and Melanie Proctor were like their mother, born with gifts beyond comprehension, but as the world began to shift against the magic she had known, Camilla had no choice but to raise her girls, not as witches, but as mortals. To the outside eye, her youngest daughter, Willow's gift was impossible to notice. She could bloom herbs and plants faster than the earth itself. Her hands brought a warmth that caused the plants to bloom, and their effects to increase. The teas Willow crafted tasted purer, and her remedies of herbs often healed illnesses much faster than her mother's. Over the years, Camilla began to keep a journal of Willow's work, mostly recipes and notes of plants' effects, should she need them, should she begin to realize her power. For Melanie, on the other hand, her gift was much more difficult to hide for a young child, especially one who loved to wander. The wisps of shadows called to her, dancing around her fingertips, following her every movement closely. To protect her eldest daughter, she explained the magic and why it must be hidden. She showed her how to conceal the magic. The two girls were well acquainted with the town. They were never seen apart, whether it was creating flower crowns in the meadow, gardening with their mother at home, or causing mischief with Thomas, the sheriff's boy, who was just a tad older than the Proctor girls. No one knew of the magic they carried, nor were they suspected in the whispers from the west. It was winter when Camilla began to grow ill. The little girls had grown into young women who stood at her bedside. Willow had married last fall, the future of the Proctor family growing deep within her womb. Though her magic remained quiet, Melanie's became harder to contain without practice, a fact that had frightened them both, her mother and Melanie. You must leave, Camilla grasped her elder daughter's hand. But Willow, Melanie whispered, moving closer to her mother, who wheezed with every breath. She will be safe so long as she remains unaware of the magic. Melanie looked hesitant, squeezing her mother's hand. We must keep our family safe. The elder sister nods, allowing the shadows to conceal her. Melanie leaves the town that night without a word to her dear sister. As Camilla takes her final breath, the tea Willow had brought her still steaming beside her, and the chill of Melanie's wisps of shadows against her palm, she prays, "Be safe, my darlings." Willow Moore lies on the floor of the town's jail, in a broken heap, curled in on herself, with tears dropping down her cheeks, dirt and tiny rocks sticking into her hands that are bound by chains. The morning, from what she could recall, had been as normal as any other. So The Crow's Call is a tale about two witch sisters, one is aware of the magic they have, and the other is not. After one of them is set to be burned at the stake, a decision has to be made. Will the sister's life be saved, or will she be another woman burned at the pyre? This is my first attempt at a third-person narrative, but it intentionally does not give us the thoughts of the characters actively. A choice that I made because I wanted to give the context of each sister's perspective and let the audience decide who to root for. If you would like to see the full collection, which I have entitled Lost and Found, digitally there are QR codes available. These two stories in their entirety are included, along with 4 more short stories ranging from a literary fiction piece that follows a young woman who in New York City, whose life is uprooted when bombs drop on the city, inciting the next global war, to my whimsical take on what I consider fairy tales with a modern literary technique. Again, I would like to thank you all for coming and for showing an interest in my work. I do have some exciting things that I'm hoping to pursue and share in the future. I've been working on several novel concepts for many years now. The one that I think is the most exciting is an epic fantasy duology that I have in the works, which is tentatively titled Coven of the Lost Kingdom. Secondly, a newer project that I want to pursue is inspired by my work with fairy tales during my last year at Guilford. I would like to make a short story collection of modern original fairy tales, some of which are included in this collection, such as The Alchemist and a Dragon, A Gift of Sister Scorn, and The Crow's Call. These stories are very much in the process of evolving, and I plan to continue on working on them post-graduation. So during the Q&A, I welcome any questions or thoughts you have on the stories, about my inspiration or my process. And now it's time for the Q&A. For those of you that have to do Gus, work on your air. You need to have a lot of air control. It's very slow. Thank you. Q&A, anybody have any fun questions? Yes, Juno.
You have so much fantasy inspiration. I'm especially noticing it in Crow's Call. That reads so much like The Crucible. Especially the references to Proctor and all of that. I'm just wondering, where are your roots in fantasy, and how do you get your inspiration? How do you pull inspiration for the works that you do?
That's a good question. I think that for The Crow's Call specifically, I have a lot of roots in witchcraft that come from my Nana's influences. I watched, I don't know how many people actually know about this show, but Charmed was a show about three sister witches. Um, so I have a lot of influence from that from when I was growing up. I also find witches and fantasy of like that level of having magic systems very fascinating. That's actually something I explore in Covenants of the Lost Kingdom, which is going to be a kind of Harry Potter witch kind of academy piece. I love that face, right? The hype is great. More questions? Yes, Raven.
So you said that you revise these stories. What does revision look like for you?
A lot of procrastination at first. I think that, and Cynthia can probably attest to this, I probably do some of like the most amount of like changing and thinking in my revisions. Like I often I'm very ambitious with my drafts and will go 110% on my draft and then realize I didn't do 90% of the things that I wanted to do in my draft. So a lot of my revision process is trying to remember all the things that I wanted to do and how to implement them into what I already have. Which is always a fun, yes, Mom. That's my mom, you guys. Yeah.
What inspired you to be a writer? Like what time or period in your life did you decide that you wanted to write?
So, origin story wise, I think I'm a little weird because for the first 10 years of my life, I hated reading. It was my least favorite thing to do in the world. And my older brother influenced me by getting me into the Hunger Games trilogy right before I started middle school, and that led me to like the Divergent Maze Runner series. But those were the only books I read. Like those like 3 or 4 over and over and over again. It wasn't until I hit high school, a friend of mine noticed a consistency of good character work. I didn't know what that word meant, to be perfectly honest. Like, we took a creative writing class in high school, and my friend at the time was like, your writing is, like, there's something there, and I would like your help with, like, a novel concept I'm working on, specifically in characters and backstory. And that turned into me co-writing the novel to eventually he left the project, and I'm still working on it. So, I would have been probably 14 or 15 at the time. And I remember vividly one of the creative writing teacher that we had that was doing the creative writing 2 at my high school had me doing essentially an audit. What he did was he put my work into a manila folder under a pen name, which was something he was doing with this class. And he also put his work under a pen name in a manila folder, so nobody knew whose work it was. And he pulled me aside as I was going to lunch one day, and I was like, oh shoot, I'm in trouble and I forget the homework or something, which was ridiculous because I never got in trouble ever. Like, I'm not that kind of person. And he pulled me aside and he was like, your work got mistaken for mine. And what was really interesting about that was he had a degree in script writing, not teaching. So it was that moment that I was like, okay, so if I'm that good at this and I'm enjoying doing it, maybe it's something I can get into. And then it kind of spiraled from there, I think. I don't know how many writers can say they started life hating to read. I think that's you hated to read as well. Yeah. There's something about it when you're young, just looking at it, like my brother doesn't like it, and I'm like, I get it, but it's so good. Anything else?
Does it feel too teachery if I ask a question? No. Okay, I don't want to turn it into that. But you said you were playing with narration.
Yes.
Is like a dominant focus in your revising.
Yes.
And so I have 2 questions. One is like, what did you learn? Like, what have you discovered in terms of that and maybe playground? And I also, in these revisions, really hear you working on with pacing.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in the relationship there, narration and pacing. But
Right.
mainly just the narration, like what have you discovered?
Well, and this isn't not to make it classy, but in a lot of my reflections for your class, I stated how we had one particular class where we really dived into the distance of the narrator and how perspective kind of shifts how far you can distance your narrator. So for stories, especially in like fairy tale-esque stories, it's usually a third person distant narrator. So when I decided I wanted the Crow's Call to be more of a pulled back perspective, and we had talked about this, I was like, I'm gonna do a draft of it in third person just to see how it feels. And that felt more natural for that story to me than it did, because originally it was gonna be just Willow's point of view. That's how it was originally drafted. And then I thought about making it another split point of view piece between Willow and Melanie. And then I was like, because Melanie became way more interesting than Willow did at one point. I was like, oh no. But I think the third person, it allows that context in terms of the world and into the sisters themselves. In terms of pacing, I still struggle, I think, with the balance of dialogue and description. I think that a lot of my stories are fast-paced because of that kind of lack of balance, but I'm working on it consistently. I think that the Raven Crest is probably gets a little rambling towards the end with dialogue, but I think that that's probably my best use of pacing and balance thus far, and I'm working on it. I like answering questions. That's fun.
Is there a character in your story that's most like yourself? Or any stories?
Any of these
collection,
two
in the
or in
collection.
general? Okay. I would say out of these two, probably Willow. Would be my. Did you have a different expectation there, Ryan?
I don't know what I was expecting.
I would say Willow. I think that as innocent as she comes off in the piece, like a lot of it is happening to her because of like her ignorance of the situation. But I think that she has a sense of heart and morality that a lot of my other characters don't necessarily do, and that's one of my favorite things to explore in my writing. I was watching so many philosophy and ethics classes. You see my transcript and it's just like all writing and art, and then it's just ethics. And I'm just like, that's a little weird.
I'll take it up for next semester.
My guess is great. No, yeah, that's like how I originally wrote. Like one of the things I really wanted to dive in with the Raven Crest is I wanted them all to have vastly different moral perspectives for that piece. So yeah, I would say Willow because she's probably the closest to my moral alignment. What was the question?
I guess follow-up question is there a character that's least like you in your stories?
Oh, that's another interesting one. The house. No, I'm not gonna say that. I knew you already answered that. The house. The house is like it kills people. I would say I relate to Miles a lot too. Probably Carmen. Would be my least one. I think that she has a lot of like baggage that she hasn't necessarily addressed, that she doesn't handle the best in the piece, and I think that something I would want to see explored with Carmen's character is her relationship with her mom further. I think that would give a lot more insight to her character, but as she is written now, I would say she is probably the one I the least like. Yeah.